I found these mirrors in my makeup compacts that I no longer use. Here's a sketch of my idea for the oval mirror. First thing to do is to remove the mirror from the compact. It would not come out easy, so I decided to use my Dremel tool to cut it out. With an oval mirror, I had to remove small sections at a time because I can only make straight cuts. My fear was getting too close to the mirror and shattering it to bits, which would ruin my whole design concept. This task did take a considerable amount of time, and I was scared the whole time that I would destroy the mirror. However, as I continued, my confidence in the process grew. I was cutting closer and closer to the mirror. You could see scraps flying all over the place. I am wearing safety glasses. Sometimes a piece would hit me on the arm or my hand, and it was slightly hot. They didn't burn, but it startled me. Look how close I'm getting to the mirror surface. The disc is melting the plastic as well as cutting it. As you can see, the edges became very rough. I tried to cut off the rough edges. It is still quite rough around the edges, but I'm afraid to cut any closer. I'm also worried that it is still kind of thick, especially in the center of the mirror back. So I reached for my sanding tip. I did not bother to check the book to find out which tip can be used on plastic. I know I have different tips for different materials. I grabbed the pink tip and it worked just fine, half sanding and half melting the plastic. I was able to make the perimeter much smoother. I actually sanded right up against the edge of the mirror. Wow! This is the room that I planned to place a mirror as part of a dresser. When I held it up to the wall, I realized that the mirror is quite big, so I will have to lower it to make it work. So I drew a sketch of what I think would work for this mirror. Then I made a scaled pattern to fit the space. I also made a pattern for the frame front to cover the edges of the mirror. These are the supplies and tools that I used to make this dresser. I had on hand some 6-inch by 4-inch balsa wood plywood sheets. The sheets are 2 millimeter thin. Balsa is a very soft wood, so it's easy to cut with a craft knife. However, I had not cut curves before this project, so we shall see how this goes. I traced my patterns onto the wood. You can see how I conserved the wood by sliding the top piece closer to the edge. That left a large enough piece to also cut the oval frame. I always try to maximize my supplies, getting the most out of it. To cut curves, cut a small portion at a time. You have to pass over the cut several times to cut all the way through. I start off slowly. Turn the board as needed. Once you have made a good line, you can then work a little faster. I check the back to see how I'm doing. Never force the wood because it can easily break. Continue to cut until you have cut all the way through. Well, that wasn't so bad. I checked it against my pattern to make sure it is good. When cutting a straight edge, it's a good idea to use a ruler edge to guide your knife so you get a straight line. Use a metal ruler, not a wooden one. After you have made several passes, you have a deep enough cut to cut without the ruler. Now to cut out the little corner. always cut away from the corner, never into it. I'm beginning to see that cutting curves is not as hard as I thought it might be. See how I used up this 4" by 6" sheet? I cut off large sections at a time to get to the oval. With each piece, my confidence is growing. Cutting this frame wasn't really all that bad. Now to check how this will go together. This is what I was afraid of. It is a mite too thick for my liking. The width of a coffee stirrer, but I wouldn't know how to bend it around the oval, and I don't want a boxy looking mirror frame. The mirror for the girls' room was very boxy because the mirror was thick, but it works fine for the girls' room. I want a more delicate piece of fine furniture for the master bedroom. My idea for the master bedroom is that it would look old, antique if you will, for the kind of feel that I want for this traditional looking room. So back to the Dremel tool. I've got to try to make this plastic on the back of the mirror much thinner. Is this making you nervous? It is me as I get closer to the mirror. If I take it off piece by piece, I can do it. Wow, look at this. Part of it is coming loose from the back of the mirror. Is it possible to remove the entire plastic from the mirror without destroying the mirror? I continued to pursue this thought for a while until well, I just knocked off a section. But I see that I am partially destroying the mirror. Some of the silver reflective coating has been scratched off. It's an antique mirror, so it's okay for a little marks, but I better not go any further. I think I need to change my tactics. It's still too thick in the middle. I need to flatten the center of the back side. So I grabbed a sanding tip with the hopes of flattening the center of the plastic backing. I did not bother to find my book that tells me which tip is for what surfaces. I knew the rust-colored ones were for wood, so I grabbed the pink one, and I got lucky. It worked for me, half sanding and half melting the plastic away. So I got it as thin as I could and tried to smooth it off the best that I could. I will have to add a piece where that piece is missing to even out the back side of the mirror. Let's see how this will work. I'll have to cut more wood frames to make the frame thicker. I learned that it would take 3 layers to make the back of the mirror flat. And that's fine, because I was imagining a rounded edge frame around the mirror front anyway. You can see that in my sketch. These oval cutouts, I may use them on the bed's headboard. I will have to make a bed frame to match this dresser with an oval top. Be sure to subscribe so you can see that project coming up next. Time to start putting this all together. I glued the 2 pieces that make up the back side of the vanity dresser. I used Gorilla Glue for this project. I slide it to make sure that it does not stick to my craft mat. Now, to replace the missing piece, which I cut from a scrap. That works. The back side of the mirror is pretty even now. 2 of the oval frame hole is cut the exact size of the mirror. The mirror must fit exactly inside the hole, So I adjust the frame where needed to make an exact cutout for the mirror to fit. I check the fit and then make any adjustments necessary. Checking. Looking good. Oh, this side needs a little work, so I'll fix it. Now we've got it. The mirror fits inside both of these frames. Great. Time to start gluing them all together. I mark the bottom of each piece so that I can match them perfectly. I first glued and clamped the two inner frames. When that was set, I glued on the face of the mirror frame and clamped it. I let the whole thing set overnight to be sure that I had a good and tight fit. The next day, I removed the clamps. Now I can sand the mirror frame, giving it the rounded edge I have wanted all along. With my wood sanding tip, I start shaping the mirror frame, rounding all the edges. The sanding makes the frame appear to be one piece of wood instead of 3 separate layers. I finish it off with sandpaper for some fine tuning. Yes, I'm very pleased how this is looking. It's not boxy, especially since it's an oval, not square. To me, oval mirror says antique, and that is what I wanted. Not too fat. Now we can finally glue our mirror onto the backing of this dresser. The hard part is done. The rest is just fun. I ran into a slight challenge while trying to clamp all the way around my mirror. My clamps will not reach the bottom section, so I had to improvise using some scrap pieces of wood. If there is a will, there is a way. I find a way to make it work. It may look kind of funky right now, but you get what I'm doing, right? I probably let that sit for several hours before coming back to it. Now we can start to build the drawers. I reach for my scrap pieces so that I don't waste any wood. I begin building a 3-sided box. I know how tall and wide I want it, but I don't know how deep the drawer should be. Okay, this scrap width will work for the depth. Now to cut it the same height as the front I had already cut out. Here I am cutting strips from coffee stirrers to give stability and strength to the panels. Plus, it will give me more gluing surface to join the parts. As I've stated before in a previous video, I like to think about the integrity of the structure that I am building to make sure that it will hold together well. In my previous video, I told you how I like to use small bowls for glue. That's fine if you're using tacky glue, but not for wood glue, unless you're very good about washing out your leftover glue before the glue dries. It is better to use a scrap of cardboard to dispense the glue. Another lesson learned. I use toothpicks to spread the glue. I added strips on the bottom to add a shelf. It's not a shelf really, but the bottom of the cabinet. One of those shelves were made from 3 pieces of craft sticks stuck together left over from my previous project. I like to use up my scraps as much as possible. Here is a great use for the cut-off rounded tips. I cut them in half and then glue them on the underside of the legs, making the legs that much stronger. 3 joined sides are better than 2, or I should say stronger than 2. Our cabinets are ready to attach to the back of the dresser. The reason they are separated was to allow the mirror to be slightly between them. The oval mirror works for that. So this dresser looks like a vanity type of dressing mirror. Again, using up my scraps, I cut tops for the cabinet. I want the top edge to have a slight overhang on 3 sides. Just like my last project, this dresser is designed around the mirror, to fit the mirror, to make it work for me. The corners are cut off to fit around the mirror. I check and double check before I cut to make sure that I have the correct size. I needed to make an adjustment on this one. I round off all the corners first by cutting off the tiny tip and then sand them. When I'm happy with the size and shape, I glue on the tops. For the drawer fronts, I found that the width of a popsicle stick will work for the top drawer and the width of a craft stick for the bottom drawer. And the width of a coffee stirrer works for the trim to hide the seam where I added the legs to the cabinet. Popsicle sticks are thicker than craft sticks, so I cut them with my small hacksaw on my miter box. I'm not making pull-out drawers on this dresser. I'm just gluing false fronts on to look like a dresser. After all, it is an imagination piece, and I wanted to keep this project simple. The trim needs to be beveled on the edges where they meet on the corner front. The miter box helps cut those angles correctly. If it was one piece, I probably wouldn't put that trim on. Now, I made a mistake when I cut out the front sections. I forgot about the legs. I could have cut it all out as one piece if I had thought of it. I considered setting the boxes aside for a future project and starting them all over again, but I opted to just cut out and add separate pieces for the legs. Live and learn. We'll make do. I did taper the inside edge of the front-facing frame so that it has a slightly beveled edge where it will be closer to the mirror. It looks cute with the 2 bottom cabinets as is, but I wanted to go one more step by making a smaller drawer on top of for the design element of it. I also used the small strips for strength and more gluing surface for a good construction even on these small drawers. I build the box, then cut the top to fit, rounding all the corners. When I think of antiques, I think of dark wood, so I stained it with a dark walnut stain. I covered the mirror so that I could use a spray lacquer for a shiny finish to the dresser. For the drawer pulls, I'm using a small, shiny bead held by a pin from my sewing supplies. I cut the pin's length so that it will fit inside the little box. I chose a drill bit that matched the width of the pin. I drilled holes with my small hand drill. I placed a dab of super glue on the hole and then inserted the pin that's holding the bead. I made sure to add a drop of super glue on top of the bead so when I push the pin all the way down, it will stick to the bead. So there you have it, a Dollhouse antique dresser made with a compact mirror. Now that you've seen the construction of it, do you think you might try something like this? It's not as hard as you might have thought. I can't wait to make another. This was a fun project. This dresser was made to fit this space. I plan to make a matching master bed and a nightstand to go with this lovely dresser. I hope you had fun watching me build this project and learned something as I overcame the obstacles and challenges of this project. Please subscribe so you can continue to follow along on my dollhouse project. Thanks for watching.